Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another adventure in history. I am your host, Shane McInnes, weird dude, giant nerd, college teacher, pop cultural guru, fan of all things goofy. In a decent mood despite the world around me. Hope you are all doing well. Welcome again to another installment of our show, Adventures in History, where we try to defunkify the past and show that history is not super boring or crusty. Hey Shane, I'll be here in just a moment getting some stuff in the washer. Cool beans, superb. You do your stuff. Glad to have you around. Again, our show is designed to sort of break down the concept that history is boring and dumb and should be passed over. We try here to connect ancient people with us and show that the people that lived back thousands and thousands of years ago are not so different than the people that we are today. We just have cooler stuff than they do. Other than that, we're actually quite a bit the same. So, welcome everybody. As usual, we'll do a bit of the rundown here. As always, please feel free to ask questions at any time. If anything pops up, stuff that you would be interested in, give it an ask. If you have a sarcastic comment, I'll take those too. The people from thousands of years ago had their heads buried in their smartphones. Not so much. Not so much. No, they typically had their heads built around how to do stuff. Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, the concept here is they were trying to find a way to entertain themselves in hours of boredom, right? Alrighty. Again, if you would like, you can click the little heart button, which has moved and it's no longer up here. It's actually down here now. A little heart button that will let you know when I am online. And you can also click the button beside it, shaped like a bell, which will let you set notifications to let you know when I am online doing stuff, just like we are now. Superb has arrived. Welcome. We were waiting just for you. I'm doing lots of finger guns today. I don't know what's up with the finger guns. You can also follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram at SomeHistoryGuy. I don't pick fights on the internet. I just post stuff that I think is cool. You can also send me an email at mckinnistravels@gmail.com if you run into anything on the net that you want to know about. Hey, Kyle Wright, wearing that shirt earlier this week. Yep, good old-fashioned Black Axe Mouse Guard t-shirt. One of my favorites. I don't yet have enough Mouse Guard shirts to have a shirt for every day of the week. So I've got to fill in the nerd stuff in between. But again, if you want to send me an email that tells me what you would like to see on the channel, what suggestions you would have to make it better, cooler, reach more people. Call me horrible names. Make sure you do that in the email, not in the chat. Feel free to disagree with anything that I say. Just because I'm a guy that's got advanced degrees in history doesn't mean that I know everything that I'm talking about. I'm just a dude that likes history, that likes to talk. Suggestion, put your foot behind your head, says Dario. Yeah. Everybody is so excited about the fact that I am odd and bendy. And this is apparently now some sort of like myth that everybody wants to see me put my foot behind my head. I don't know. I feel like if I did it on stream, it would get clipped and it would literally never go away. And considering the interaction that I've had with people from the stream prior, specifically with the foot behind their head stuff, I don't know. Tall tale, no one has seen it yet. That's not true. Many people have witnessed this event. Of course, I could tell my wife to tell you, but you would say that she's in on it. Oh, so I love how Kyle is representing here both himself and Daria. So he is the hive mind of Karia or Dial. I don't know what's the hive mind name of you two. Oh, you had photo evidence at one point. Yeah. I still have that photo evidence. Also, if you are so inclined and have Amazon Prime, you can link your Amazon Prime and Twitch account, and then, hey, 6LL25, welcome back. Dial approves of this name. If you have Amazon Prime, you can link your Amazon account and Twitch account and get access to a free subscription. You may use that subscription for any streamer of your choice. Of course, I am very biased. You could use that for my channel. That does equal actual money for me. I do get money from that. So you're gluing, so Kyle has to speak for both. I see. For those of you that do not know, I don't think I can shout out Daria because she's not actually in the room, but there is a very talented artist, friend of the channel, Daria Axanova. Her Twitch channel is Daria Axanova. I can type it. I don't think it's going to show up, though. That is her Twitch channel. Go hang out, give her a click, give her a follow. Her room is very chill. Of course, if you don't want to see any more of me, don't go over there because I'm frequently in that room. Hey, Vanity's Fall, how's it going, man? Or, not man, how's it going? Cool people, how's it going? I say man for everybody. I am not assuming anybody's gender. Alright, so now I can do this. Boom! Check that out. Spread the love. We have a cool kingdom here that I have fallen into, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the king by any means, but I will say that there are a lot of really cool creative people here on Twitch that I have met through my travels through various rooms. I think that most of the people in the room here with us today are people that I have bumped into in one place or the other in the corner of Twitch. Not all of... I thought you were going to talk about Arabian history. We'll have to wait for a viewer request stream. If you want to come back on a viewer request and put that in to get it voted on, that's what we'll do. Thursday night streams are typically chronological order. The Tuesday night streams that we do are viewer requests. And I would love to talk about Arabian history. But chronologically speaking, we are in the sort of the height of the Bronze Age right now, so we wouldn't be getting around to Arabia for a little bit. But I'd be happy to skip out of... actually a dude. The name is just messed with people. Okay, cool. So in the viewer request streams, I'm happy to skip around and just talk about whatever anybody wants to talk about. Speaking of, next Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, our viewer request episode is on the Inca people who lived in South America, Native American culture, built Machu Picchu. It's kind of their famous thing that a lot of people know about. But we'll talk a lot more about them. They are so much cooler than just Machu Picchu. There's also Nazca, communication through knot writing, which is really, really neat stuff. Roads in the mountains, really, really cool stuff, the Inca people. So come check them out next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do want to make a bit of... kind of an announcement, but it's not necessarily an announcement. It's more of a reminder. I have instituted myself a little command here, and it will actually pop up, or it's supposed to pop up randomly about every 15 minutes or so. There are rules to the chat. We are talking about history. which of course involves individual people's pasts, which can be a topic that is emotionally charged. But my room is not a place to disparage anybody. My chat is not a place to call each other names or to try to tear down somebody or blame an individual for actions of the past. Nobody alive today was alive 1,000 years ago. It just doesn't work. And we had some stuff at the end of the last stream that really sort of got personal. I feel like I probably should have shut that down before it even got rolling. For those of you that were here, I do apologize for that. But make sure that you see the rules here. I definitely want the place to be fun. I want people to be able to interact. Riyadh, capital of Saudi Arabia. I'm pretty good at the world capital stuff. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is there are times where we can discuss things, and we can even have differing opinions. You can think somewhere completely different than I am. You can have opinions way different than I am. You can have all sorts of really disparate concepts between you as chat people. But let's remember, we are all citizens of the same planet. We are all so much more alike than we are different. Our differences are important and that they are what make us individuals, but we can focus on being a community of people where things are cool and ideas are exchanged freely and open minds exist and people can gain a different level of respect for each other. I've already been impressed by the amount of audience that I've been able to pull in. I've had people from Asia, people from Europe, people from Central and South America.
I'm Spartacus!
I am Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
Thank you, Kelly Hallett, for that Twitch Prime subscription. I am Spartacus. And we can all be Spartacus. The goal here is just to be a group of people that can talk about history, learn more about ourselves, make the world a little bit better along the way, and just have some fun, right? Which brings us to our topic for the night. You need to make your own alert box much bigger. Yeah, the playing around with that stuff actually is not as easy as it sounds. For those of you that don't do lots of streaming stuff, there are so many moving parts behind the scenes that you have to fiddle around with and resize and stretch and move and blah, blah, blah. I'm Brian. Hey, Joey, how's it going? Is this Brian like Life of Brian? Because I'd be down with that too. One of my favorite movies, favorite comedy movies. So, last week we are... you set up everything to play alerts from Bloodsport. Oh, man. Is one of them the Dumak, the Death Touch? I love that movie. One of my faves. I've still got to get my wife to watch that. Anyway, we're talking right now about Bronze Age cultures, and we've talked about Chinese Bronze Age, Indus River Bronze Age. Last week we talked about Mesopotamian region Bronze Age, especially the Babylonia region and the Assyrian region. Tonight we're going to be talking about two more big Bronze Age empires, one of them being Mitanni and one of them being the Hittites, which brings us to On That Hittite Train to Georgia. I love old music, by the way, for those of you that are not aware. I grew up listening to all my parents' old records. And I have a very old musical soul. I like listening to really, really old stuff that even came out like in the 30s and so, or 20s when you first start seeing records. Even earlier than that, if you can find some of the old recordings that were on wax cylinders that were later translated over into records and recordings and stuff like that. I just like music in general. I do play music. I play several instruments. I can sing okay, I guess, but I'm not like a professional or anything of that nature. So, little Gladys Knight for you. The song, by the way, is Midnight Train to Georgia. It's actually pretty hard to come up with a pun for all of these things. Random history fact. About anything in particular, or just literally at random? Totally random. Okay. See, this is such a big thing. Because there's so much history, and my brain is kind of crammed full with all of this stuff. Man, I'm trying to find something that would be topical and interesting. Okay, how about this? This will be a random history fact that has, well, I can't let... okay, so I will give you a fact about Lawrence of Arabia, but since 6 Law 25 spent the topics, or spent the points, I have to honor 6 Law 25's request. So here's a random concept that deals with world that we're living in right now. When you look at race in America, I know this is a heated topic, but it is. But I think it's an important topic to talk about. When you start talking about how the legal system in America, especially the British colonies of North America, qualified Africans as different. As early as the 1670s, you see laws in the Virginia colony that create legal and ethnic distinctions between white people and African people. And the implicit point of the laws and the judges' decisions from the 1670s, especially in a case particularly regarding a white person having a child with a black slave woman, is purely based on the concept that a black person in America at that time was not even considered of legal right, but only of legal property. So when you hear people say, oh, there's no such thing as systemic racism in America, it goes all the way back to the 1670s. So there you go, random history fact. Okay, so weird thing about Lawrence of Arabia, and because I'm feeling generous, I will even give you a very brief adventure hat moment for Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia was filmed in part in a region of Jordan, down here in the southern part of Jordan, in a really big desert, just north of a city called Aqaba. And in the actual, what am I trying to say here? In the movie Lawrence of Arabia, there's a big famous train sequence, and the train actually sits on the side of a road right about here. And I've seen it because I've been there. So there you go. Random fact. I do need to build a random fact generator of a topic. Maybe something that somebody could like spin the points and it would spin the wheel or something like that. That's a great idea, Kelly. We can make that happen. Sounds great. By the way, guys, I am absolutely 100% open to suggestions. I want this to be just as much our stream as it is me sitting here talking. Been there, done that, wearing the hat. Oh, so you've actually been to the... Oh, no, you're saying like I've been there, done that, and wore the hat. Unfortunately, for the hat's sake, that was prior to the hats being in my possession. When I was in Jordan, I did not have the adventure hat. So I guess it might have been a little bit unjust to wear the adventure hat while discussing somewhere that the adventure hat had not been. I don't know. I don't think it'll mind. Okay, but let's talk about some Hittites. Okay, so again, we're going to be talking about our. Yes, I do still need the opinion beret. So about the opinion beret, I had very briefly considered making it an opinion trucker hat. With the words "I'm right," like I'm correct, embroidered on it. So that might still be happening. I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of me working on a big giant trucker hat that says "I'm right" on it. I also don't know if I want myself to be portrayed wearing a trucker hat to be perpetually living on the internet. So I think it might be a little bit more up to American speed, though, and I know that's potentially being rude, but I think we'll give ourselves a little bit of a slide. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Hittites before I get myself in too much trouble. So we were talking last week about the civilizations in the Bronze Age that lived down here in Mesopotamia, and I threw our borders on so that we can get an idea of where the modern-day countries are. And we were talking about Babylon, which is the southern part of Mesopotamia, and Assyria, which was the northern part of Mesopotamia. And along the way, we mentioned two more empires, one of those being the Hittites, which are based up here in what is modern-day Turkey, and the Mitanni, who are based in what is today modern based in modern-day northern Iraq and Syria and part of this region down here, which we call the Levant. Okay, so we're going to be talking about those two groups today, the Mitanni and the Hittites. And this is, again, building part of this kind of larger cultural concept of the Bronze Age. There is a lot of cosmopolitan lifestyle going on during these periods of time. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of sophistication. But what we're building towards is the collapse of it all, because all of this stuff comes falling down rather quickly between about 1200 and about 1100 BC. And that's where we're heading. So we're going to build all of this great stuff, and I'm going to show you all kinds of cool things and really great pictures and even pieces of pottery. And then we're going to destroy all of it, and we'll have a dark age for a few hundred years. Sounds fun and bleak, right? I did see a very interesting article today. I didn't post it on my Twitter because I don't know if it's confirmed or not. But some person has decided that we, in 2012, were calculating the Maya long-term calendar incorrectly, and because of the changeover from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, they had lost something like, it had lost something like 2,000 or so days. And if we look at the correct interpretation of the Maya long count calendar, the Mayas would suggest that the world would end on June 21st, 2020, which might explain a little bit about why 2020 is being so crazy. No, Vanity, Brittany, she is my wife. I don't necessarily like the fractional margin because I get the really short end of the stick. She's probably like my better 3/4. She is way smarter than I am, and very pretty. I'm a aggressively okay-looking dude with good sales tactics. So, all right. So who are these Hittite people? Let me turn these borders off because we're not going to use them so much. So to begin with, the Hittites are Indo-Europeans. And we've talked about the Indo-Europeans quite a bit now. They're going to move into the region of Anatolia, which again is what we use to describe modern-day Turkey, especially though this sort of central region right here. And the Hittites are going to move into that region around 2000 BC. Their language is tied to the Indo-European language group. Their ethnic groups are tied to the Indo-European haplotypes. So these are pretty clearly Indo-European, dyed-in-the-wool kind of individuals. there are people already living in Anatolia at that time, especially people called the Hatti and the Hurrian people. And the Hittites, and I guess I should type this too, right? The Hittites are going to intermarry with these native people, but they're definitely going to be in charge. And along the way, the Hittites are going to run into a lot of the colony cities of the Assyrians. One of the things we talked about last week was some of the old Assyrian Empire getting really, really good at projecting colony power out into, yeah, there we go. Autumn, Bronwyn, and Coco are Anatolians, Anatolian shepherds, really cool big dog. Welcome, David. David Peterson. Oh, I guess I gotta actually do this, huh? David Peterson, author, illustrator of Mouse Guard. Really cool stuff. I don't know why my shout out isn't working. Okay. Anyway, he did this shirt, and he does cool stuff. Go watch this channel. Anyway, especially the Assyrian city of Kanesh, which was one of the kind of old Assyrian Empire colony cities that was in Turkey. The Hittites are going to recognize the level of Assyrian sort of dominance in the region. They're also going to recognize that the Assyrians were much more culturally advanced, and this is when you're going to see the Hittites actually start picking up cuneiform, which of course is a writing style. The Assyrians are going to be writing in their own Assyrian language, but using the cuneiform script. The Hittites are also going to borrow this script to write in their own language. However, the Hittites did have sort of a more regional language called Luvian, and they're going to write in something called Luvian hieroglyphics, which is pictograms similar to Egyptian hieroglyphics. So think that, but a little bit different. I can show you a picture of those later on if everybody is excited about it. But these Hittites are originally pastoralists. They're not originally what we would call sedentary agriculturalists. They're not growing crops. They're moving herds around. And when they're moving into Anatolia, they're running into all of these Assyrian colony cities. They're running into cities that are populated by Hurrian peoples and Hattian peoples. And by about 1900 BC, we can already tell that these Hittites are good at what they do, and what they do is like fight. They fight really, really well. They have with them chariots. They are credited with being the first people in the Near East to use horse-drawn chariots. I don't know if I completely agree with that assertion or not. It's a comfortable one, but I think that there are some additional pieces of evidence that a lot of people don't like to look at, but that's me being opinionated, and I'm not wearing the opinion hat. So what is almost certainly going to be the case for the first couple hundred years of the Hittite domination of Anatolia is what we call a superstrate. And this is the sort of opposite of a substrate. So if you know what a substrate is, this is a superstrate. And this is what happens when one militarily dominant minority moves into a region and takes over the militarily inferior majority. So the Hattians and the Hurrians had more people, but the Hittites were better fighters. So they are going to establish rule in a lot of the smaller cities. They're going to put their people in charge of the administration of these cities. And you're going to start seeing early kingdoms show up around the 1800s BC. And there are going to be two major groups of Hittites that start actually kind of fighting with each other. One of them is going to be based at a place called Hattusa, and the other one is going to be actually out of that city called Kanesh, which again was originally an Assyrian trade city, but gets taken over by the Hittites. And so these are going to be two big groups. To kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here, Hattusa is right here in the middle of the Anatolian region. It's at a modern-day region called Boyazkoy. Kanesh is over in this region. So it's more tied to the kind of Mesopotamian system and the trade routes of old Assyria ran up into this region right here. So you have the power base at Hattusa and the power base at Kanesh, and these guys are kind of duking it out with each other. Eventually, the leaders at Kanesh are going to win out. I'm sorry, the winners at the leaders at Hattusa are going to defeat the leaders at Kanesh and unify everything. And I've got some images that I can show you because I've been to a lot of these places. I was luckily visiting Turkey prior to a lot of the unrest. I flew out of Istanbul less than a week prior to the big machine gun and suicide bomb attack that happened at the Istanbul airport. This is right before the attempted coup that was led by the military to try to push the current leader of Turkey, a guy named Erdogan, out of power. But I got to see a lot of cool stuff before that happened. I don't know if I'd necessarily feel super safe about going over there again right now. We've got surveillance footage. But this is a Hittite warrior. And this was carved into a big gatepost at a place called Hattusa, which is going to be the capital of this new unified Hittite kingdom. And what you can see here is that he's got with him his war axe. These axes would have been bronze, lashed onto treated wooden handles. You've got a nice big treated leather helmet here with some bronze plates on it. Not a lot of armor, but you can tell here that he's got some shin guards. This, of course, is not going to be him in a chariot, but you get a good idea of what these guys look like. And this is actually carved in about 3/4 life size. So this piece of stone here would have originally sat outside of what was called the King's Gate at the city of Hattusa, which led from the main part of the city out to where the emperor would have lived. So this unification is going to be very fortuitous. The Hittites are going to turn Hattusa into a very thriving region. It becomes not only just a big city, but also a gigantic trading hub. There are people that live all the way around the Hittites. So the Hittites are going to mostly dominate this central region and have a border that sort of stretches in a diagonal region over here. This region right here is referred to historically as the Kilikian Gates. There's a big gap right here. This region of southern Turkey is called Kilikia. And there's a passageway that you can see here that allows people from both south and from the east to kind of breach their way into Kilikia. So hence the Kilikian Gates. This is how people would invade the region. But the Hittites are going to be mostly dominating the central region. There are going to be lots of little kingdoms over in here. There are some states over this way, especially the kingdoms of Gordia and Phrygia. There's Luvian kingdoms over here. There are also the earliest evidences of people living down in these islands out this way, which would be originally the Cretans, people that lived on Crete, who were originally called the Minoans, the Minoan civilization, and then later the Mycenaean civilization. We'll talk about those people a little bit next Thursday, in conjunction with Egypt as well. So Hattusa is a pretty cool place, and I'm going to put the hat on here. You're not going to be able to see me wear the hat very much because I'm about to go through a pretty neat series of pictures from the actual site of Hattusa, which is, again, the capital of the Hittite Empire. So if we're looking at Hattusa as a concept, it's a big old city, right? So it has to have big city gates, and eventually I'll be able to make it skip to the next one. Come on, pictures, don't do this. Every time I try to use a picture, it goofs up. Maybe if I do this and that. Aha. Yes, here we are. So this is the main gate of Hattusa. It's also referred to as the Lion Gate, which you can pretty clearly see why it's called the Lion Gate, or at least I would hope so. The city walls here are middle Bronze Age walls, but also reinforced in the late Bronze Age. They're quite thick and very big. This is looking out across the site of Hattusis. It sits on top of this sort of natural flat-topped hill. You can see that the region around it is very fertile and green and lush, and all of these little gray outlines would have been buildings, especially these down here on this flat part of the plain were actually temples. The Hittites had quite a few gods and were actually kind of interested in accumulating gods. One of the things that you sort of hear reference to every now and then was the Hittites kind of stealing other people's gods. But this sort of projection here, this round-topped area, would have been purely for the emperor. This is where the big palace was. You can see this large structure. Let me actually zoom in a little bit on that. So this entire large structure right here would have been the palace. Over in this region, we have actually found a repository of hundreds and hundreds of tablets written in various languages, which were the royal correspondences between Hittite leaders and various other international leaders. These were enormously important to helping us understand the Bronze Age. The Hittites are going to be sort of the forefront leaders of the concept of international peace treaties, and you're going to see them quite frequently initiating peace talks with their neighbors, which is sort of a novel idea. The concept of, if you don't act like a jerk, people might like you. I don't know the last time anybody's tried that. One of the most impressive parts of Hattusis is actually this thing that we're looking at right here. This is a gigantic rampart that was built by human hands. And we are standing here at the top of it. Why were they collecting gods, accumulating power of a feeling, or being lost? So the Hittites lived in a very kind of fluid world, and there's a lot of mixing of cultures. Later on, the Hittites are actually going to either steal or borrow or just absorb some of the Mitannian gods. They were also quite successful in beating up some of their neighbors, kingdoms like a little region called Kizuwatna, also little regions off to their west. And when you're running an empire, one of the ways that you can actually pacify a lot of the populace is to not completely destroy their religion. You can be what's called syncretic or syncretist, where you move in and you allow them to continue worshiping the way that they usually do, but you find some way to make your gods and their gods either look the same or be aspects of the same thing. So what you end up getting is the Hittites conquering all of these smaller people around them, and then finding out that it's a lot easier to rule them if they let these people keep their gods. And then you come back to Hattusis and you build a temple to this god. And to a certain degree, if you are a really big polytheist, a person that believes in multiple gods, and you don't have a god for this particular thing, right? So let's say we don't have a goddess for things that get stuck in drawers. And then we go defeat this other country who has a goddess for things that get stuck in drawers. Well, I mean, why not add her to the pantheon? You don't want to make gods angry, right? They control things. And it's really annoying when you want to get that thing out of your drawer and you can't get it out because something's stuck there. It's because you've made the goddess Anoia angry, right? So why not bring some more in? That's a fair question, though. It's a good one. Had to leave for the grocery store. Can't make biscuits without gravy. Biscuit! Oh man, I have such a great story about biscuit, but I can't tell it right now. I'm actually already running over. I knew I was going to be long-winded on this one because I love this stuff so much, but I'm already running over time. I guess I'll talk for as long as you all are willing to listen, right? Anyway, so let's talk about this rampart. So this tree down here and this big rock down here are actually at ground level. And what we see here is a multi-tiered defensive structure. So this big thing right here is a hill made out of rocks. And this big thing on top of it is a second level of that big hill made out of rocks. And all of this stuff was constructed by hand as a defensive mechanism because this is the backside of Hattusis. And if you look out on this area back here, this is nice flat land, and you don't want your capital city to be easily attacked from the back. You want to funnel people through to where your big defenses are, or build really big defenses. But Shane, don't you say that about all the things you talk about on this stream? What is that? That I don't have time to talk about it, or that it's really cool? Or that I like it really a lot? I admit, I love history. I'm a giant nerd. I get excited about all of this stuff. So let's look at another picture of this rampart here. So this is just the upper part of the rampart. And here you see a gentleman that I've mentioned several times, friend, mentor, one of the great teachers of my life, a gentleman named Dan Browning, who was with me on this trip to Turkey. I got him in the picture as a size reference. So this is just the top level of the rampart. Again, all of this was constructed by hand and on purpose. So this is standing at the bottom level, and you can see how tall this thing is. It's somewhere between 100 and 110 feet tall. It's ridiculous. It stretches for about 300 yards. I could put a lot more pictures on this, but what I'm trying to show you with this rampart is that Hattusis had become the place. It was incredibly powerful. It had a lot of people that lived there, and the kings of the Hittites were able to marshal large forces and lots of power behind them. And this is what's going to make the Hittites one of the most powerful empires in this region at the time. So the kingdom itself is going to be unified, and this is where we get some really fun stuff because I get to tell you all these kings' names. The guy that unified the Hittites was a guy named Hattusili. Hattusili the First. He rules from about 1586 to about 1556 BC. He's the guy that decides that Hattusis is going to be the capital. He expands quite a bit. If you'll remember, last week we talked about a period of time in the 1500s, around the middle of the 1500s, when the Hittites invaded all the way down into Babylon and sacked the city of Babylon and ran the Amorites out of control of Babylon. Well, Hattusili I is the leader that does that. He is also going to set up the first successful ruling dynasty of the Hittites. He's going to have problems with his sons, though. The Hittite Empire under Hattusili had expanded rather rapidly, and they had a lot of regions under their control, and Hattusili had hoped that he could use his sons as sort of regional governors. But it turns out that they were all, according to him, completely unfit for rule. And what that means was he gave them a region, and then they tried to rebel against old dad. And on his deathbed, Hattusili decides that he's not going to leave the kingdom to his sons. He's going to leave it to one of his grandsons, who is a good kid. Chip off the old block. Also, not interested in playing politics, just wanted to rule everything, right? And this kid's name is Mursili. I love these names, by the way. Don't you want to name your firstborn son Mursili? I mean, come on. Nobody else is named Mursili right now. I don't know. There might be. There might be some person in Turkey that's trying to bring the Hittites back. Mursili is going to be really big on the expansion. Mursili is going to be indirectly involved with the power shift in Babylon, if you'll remember when the Amorites got run out, the Kassites took over. It's suspected rather that Mursili was the one that sort of allowed the Kassites to move in. And when he gets back from one of these big campaigns, he's actually got quite a few enemies at home, especially his uncles, who thought that they should have been selected to rule, right? So Dad didn't pick me, he picked one of my sons, and that makes me pretty angry, so I'm going to go kill my nephew. And unfortunately for old Mursili, he only gets to rule for a little while, and then he gets assassinated by his family, who were very interested in shifting the dynastic control from one part of the ruling family to another. And what ends up happening is when Mursili gets killed, the Hittite Empire just kind of goes into crap. The region that was on the border is this place called Kizzuwatna, and they're going to end up breaking away and becoming independent. And then for a little while, Kizzuwatna is actually going to be allied with Mitanni. But this disruption of the Hittite Empire is going to allow a lot of the regions that they had dominated to gain independence again. And that's, kind of the way that it happens. When the center cannot hold, the edges fall apart, right? And to kind of give you an idea, I've mentioned now several of these border kingdoms. Let me actually show you a map, and I can point out some of these areas. So here we have, in the middle, like I said, Hatti, which is the kingdom of the Hittites. And you can see some of these other regions. The region out here, Arzawa, was a fairly powerful kingdom of its own. Arzawa was going to be one of the sort of kind of thorns in the side of the Hittite Empire out west. Is it what now? Kizzuwatna is this region right here. The population of Kizzuwatna was very heavily Hurrian. And you can't see it because I'm showing you this image here, but I'll type it here so that we can see it when we pop back up. But the Hurrians were an ethnic group. They were an ethno-linguistic group. And the Hurrians are much more ethnically akin to these people over here, which is the kingdom of Mitanni. And we're going to start talking about Mitanni a lot more, because when the Hittite Empire starts falling apart after this dynastic struggle, the region of Mitanni is going to become much more powerful. By the way, there is actually a double level of pun in tonight's title. For those of you that know the Gladys Knight song, it's actually talking about Georgia, the state in the United States. But if you know anything about this region up here along the Black Sea coastline, there's actually a country up here called Georgia. Capital's Tbilisi. There's a free one for you. Hittite trained to Georgia. Hittites were trying to expand into this region. It's a double pun. I'm a goofy guy. Don't hate me. All right. So, of course, over here you can also see the borders of the Hittite Empire and Egypt. We'll talk about Egypt a lot more. Ashur, which is the region of Assyria, and then of course you have Babylonia down here in the southern part. And we'll look at a larger regional map at the end of the discussion here. Again, I'll mention Ahiwaya. Ahiyawa was, according to most modern concepts, the Mycenaeans in Germany. Not in Germany, in Greece. I'm sure we're talking about the region where the country of Georgia is. Yes, I can... Here, let me turn off my images. I've been very goofy here. It's been a pretty good couple of days. So this is the modern-day country of Georgia here. You can see it. All right, so this is Georgia. It borders Russia here, and then Azerbaijan, and then Armenia and Turkey. There we go. So that's modern stuff, though. But you get what I'm after. You smell what the rock is cooking, right? Why settle for one pun when you can have two, right? If you have puns, feel free to share your puns. I might not always get them because sometimes I get stuck in in teacher mode, and like last stream, poor Kelly had to explain all of the puns to me, and it just I could just feel her like sadness, like. Anyway, here are the Hurrian peoples that I mentioned right here. Hurrians. Oop, there we go. I'm not used to pointing directly south of me. Always over here. Okie doke. So, what happens? Well, you get this rise of the kingdom of Mitanni, and we'll talk about them a lot more in just a second. But there's going to be a period of time where the Hittites get themselves back together. There's going to be a guy named Telepinu, who is a pretty strong king, who manages to put things back together for just his rule. He rules for maybe a decade, maybe a decade and a half or so. And then for about the next 70 or so years, the Hittites aren't going to be that strong. They're going to end up moving their capital, which is never a good sign, right? When you have to move your capital, that means, like, for real, the center cannot hold. And this is, again, because of these regional power bases sort of picking off the edges of the Hittite region. Also, internal fighting. There's a civil war. And during this period of time, this is when the Hurrians are going to start really influencing a lot of the Hittite gods. And you're going to start seeing a lot of the Mitanni gods kind of creep over into the Hittite world a little bit. And you're also going to start seeing a lot more of those diplomatic treaties that I talked about. Because here's the thing. If your military might is not enough to make people just line up and do what you tell them to do anymore, you have to find ways to be friendly with them. So the treaties that the Hittites are making aren't necessarily done because they think that it's the best thing to do. A lot of it is because after about 1500, the Hittites are going to be in not so great shape. From about 1500 to about 1430, they're going to be in really, really bad shape. And that is going to change with the arrival of such a great name, and that dude's name is Tudela. Tudela the First. Everybody knows Tudela, right? He rules for about 30 years, which is a very long time in the ancient world to rule, and it is a mark of his both his diplomatic skill and his military strategy. He's going to be the guy that really turns the Hittite Empire into a single state. And one of the things that he's going to rely on that previous Hittite kings had not was the good old-fashioned fusion of kingship and the divine. So prior to Tudela, the Hittite kings, they didn't say that they were related to the gods. Tudela goes, oh, no, you can't kill me because I am put here by the gods and related to the gods. So he does that old move that we've talked about multiple times now of where you're ruling a big empire, you're trying to keep a lot of people happy, you tied the well-being of their religious nature to your political power. Toodles, if you know him well. Toodsy. I'm going to see Toodles this afternoon. Oh, man. You guys are good. Tudela is going to manage to retake a lot of the border regions. He's going to reconstitute the southern territories and get back to the Mediterranean. He's going to move out to the west and beat the Luvians up. He's also going to be part of a coalition that we'll talk about in a little bit that helps the Assyrians break away from the Mitanni control. And you're going to see Tudela being a pretty strong guy, and by the end of his reign, the Hittites are back in the mix. They had solved their internal problems, and they're going to be back outward-facing again. Right? Okay, so we've talked about Mitanni quite a bit. Let's actually talk about them directly. So you can see their names spelled lots of different ways. Some people spell it like that. Some people spell it like this. Some people don't call him Mitanni at all. Some people call him Henny Galbat, which is just a weird name that you get the Egyptians referring to them as. Sometimes you also see them referred to as just the Hurrian Empire, and sometimes you see them referred to as the Marianu. And this is going to be kind of a weird moment. We know a lot about Mitanni because of the region around them. Because Babylon was so powerful, and because Assyria was so powerful, and because the Hittites were so powerful, and because the Egyptians were so powerful, we know that the Mitanni were also very powerful. But here's the thing about Mitanni that is different than all of those other cultures. And the number one thing is we haven't found their capital city. Their capital city is a place called Washukani. And I can't tell you how many times I tried to make Washukani a pun. It's hard. It's a word that's got too many syllables and doesn't really rhyme with anything else, right? And I'll give you a sneak peek into my brain. The closest thing that I could think of that I almost used, but I decided not to do it, was Washukani about Willis. And I just didn't think that it would... I didn't think that it had the oomph that it needed to. It just wasn't there. And now everyone is like scrambling, hopefully, to make Washukani puns and show me up. Or if not, I just hope you're having fun anyway. Okay, so who are these Mitanni people? We haven't found their capital city, and that limits us a lot. So when we were talking about Hattusis, and I showed you Hattusis, and I told you that we dug up all of these documents, hundreds and hundreds of documents, all right? We know where Assyria was based. We know where Ashur was. We've dug up hundreds and hundreds of documents. We know where Babylon was. We know where they were based. We've dug up hundreds and hundreds of documents. We know where the Egyptians were. We know where their capital was. We've dug up their capital documents. We don't know where Washukani was. And because of that, we haven't got that big Bronze Age king document hoard, which would be amazing. And I can show you an unfortunate thing, and I'll show the modern borders here. The Mitanni kingdom sat right in this region. This sort of northern Iraq, Syria, southern Turkey region. And we know a little bit about their capital. We know that it was between the Tigris and Euphrates, and we know that it was near this mountain range. So here's the thing. It could have been in this region right here. And if you know anything about history since 2011, you'll know that this region right here used to be the home of a group called ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, also known by the rest of the world as AiH. And if you know anything about AiH, you might also know that one of the ways that they funded their terrorist organization was through selling black market antiquities. And it was very common for AiH and ISIS fighters to go out into the tells of these ancient cities and dig up whatever they could and sell the stuff on the black market. And if Washukani was in northern Syria, it might be destroyed forever. And we might not ever know. Another thing that AiH was unfortunately known for was finding old stuff and destroying it. Batman is a real place, not just a sneaky... Yes, Batman is an actual city in Turkey. It's right here, southeast of Diyarbakir. Not far from Lake Bant. I would love to have gone out this way when we were over there. We got fairly close. We got down here into Sanliurfa. We did not get all the way to Batman. We were heading for a region right down in this area. A place called Karahan Tepe. But we did not make it to Batman. At the time that we were there, the largest threat to travelers in Turkey were the Kurdish people who were attempting to basically disrupt the government because the Kurdish people want their own state, and rightfully so. The Turks do not want to give them that. And so there was a lot of tension between the Turkish people and the leadership of the Kurdish groups, and the Kurdish groups are based down in this region. So we made sort of a tactical decision to not go all the way over to Lake Van, even though there is really cool places to go see. There's a little island out in the southern part of this lake, right out here. And on that island, there's this really, really wicked cool late antique church that was built by the Armenians and used as the royal church of the Armenian dynasty. And I would love to go there, but you got to make logistical decisions. And when we got to Samliurfa and past a big military kind of parade full of Humvees with 50 caliber machine guns on the top of them heading out towards Batman, we decided Lake Van was out of the question. Anyway, Mitanni. So the reason I was telling you all that about Washukani is because, again, we might not ever find it. So we might not ever know as much about the Mitanni as we do about these other big empires. The Mitanni were Indo-Aryans. They were a subset of the Indo-Europeans. And we've already talked a little bit about the Aryans because they're the people that get over into India and wreak havoc with the Dravidian people in India. For those of you that are interested in learning more about that and you didn't check it out, go check out Get Down with the Indus. Episode probably 7 or 8, somewhere in there. These people are unique. They are another super straight culture. They move into this region around 1600, and when the Hittites are falling apart on the inside, the Mitanni are able to push themselves into this region and carve themselves out a nice big state. And this is mostly done at the beginning of the rule of a guy named Parshatatar. I know you guys are loving these names. Nope, I put too many. Parshatatar. There we go. Parshatatar rules in the middle 1400s, somewhere around 1450 most likely. This guy is expansion-minded. He is going to take advantage of a lot of the disruption inside of the empire of the Hittites to take land away from them. Parshatatar is going to move down into the Levant region, which again is what we would consider modern-day Holy Land, especially the coastal border of Syria, this region right in here. He's also going to take Kizzuwatna, which was, again, majority Hurrian anyway, and they're more ethnically similar to the Mitanni than they were the Hittites, so it made more sense for them to sort of be part of Mitanni. Pardon me, sir, but you have any Parshatatar? Oh, man. Your name not Bruce, then. That's going to cause a little problem. Every time I bring up a new name, a Monty Python sketch comes to mind. Yeah, I am. I love Monty Python so much. I need to get my wife to watch Flying Circus with me. Flying Circus is great. It's all on Netflix, so everybody just go watch that stuff. One of the things that Parshatatar is especially going to be known for is establishing this super straight kind of rule. Again, this is where you have an ethnic minority ruling an ethnic majority. So they've moved in, they've got chariots, they've got advanced warfare tactics, they're going to take over these cities, and they're going to, under Parshatatar, they're going to start moving out a lot of these rulers and putting in their own people. And these are either going to be actual Mitanni ethnic people themselves, or they're going to put in place client kings that are loyal to their cause. And this is going to get some movement going. Movement in the strong direction, right? Because after that guy, you have Shalshatatar. Shaushtatar. Yes. Cue giant foot coming down and crushing. Shaushtatar is going to be one of the most successful Mitanni leaders. He is going to be the leader that leads the Mitanni down into Assyrian territory. If you'll remember when we were discussing the Assyrians last week, around that 1400 to early 1390s mark, the Mitanni are going to sack the capital of Assyria, Ashur, and they're going to basically force the Assyrian Empire into a subservient role. They're going to turn them into client kings. And this is going to be a big deal. Shaushtatar is going to be a very powerful king. He's going to get a little bit of a big head, though, because after he defeats the Assyrians and brings them into the larger Mitanni Empire, he's going to start picking fights with the big dogs. And the biggest dog on the block at this time was Egypt. Egypt at the time was under its new kingdom, and Egypt's power extended all the way down into southern, it's actually upriver for the Nile, but most of the Levant region and into what is modern-day Syria. So they had a very large and very powerful empire. But Shaushtatar thinks, I'm pretty big and strong myself. I can duke it out with the Egyptians. And there's going to be some fighting here. And the Mitanni are going to be able to hold their own against the Egyptians. This is not something that you might expect. Mitanni is sort of the newest of these empires at the time, and they kind of showed up with a lot of force and stormed in, and now they're fighting with Egypt, and they're not only just making moves, they're holding their own. And this is going to be an interesting moment, because Egypt is going to recognize that they need some help. And we haven't talked a lot about Egypt so far. We've talked a lot about Assyria fighting with the Babylonians, and we've talked about Mitanni fighting with the Hittites. The reason we haven't talked about Egypt so much is because nobody wanted to pick a fight with Egypt. These guys were the juggernauts in the room, right? And here's Mitanni giving them a bloody lip. And the leaders of Egypt have to sort of... Egypt were the cool kids, like, who are these guys? The flying Shaushur. I like it. So Egypt is kind of like taken aback. Like, this is, Rocky 2, where the little punk Italian guy is beating up the champ, right? And so Egypt is going to go, all right, this is too much. And Egypt reaches out to the Hittites and to the Assyrians and goes, look, we're not going to tell you that you should attack the Mitanni, but we would find it very helpful if you would attack the Mitanni. We're not going to give you anything except maybe a pat on the back, but if you guys want to do some border fighting that would, knock these guys back a bit, that'd be great, and we can go back to being the cool kids in the corner with our feet put up, And this is going to be kind of an uncomfortable moment if you're a Mitanni, because you're surrounded at that point by 3 empires that don't like you. You've beaten all of them, and now they're all sort of talking against you. So you've given the bully the fat lip, and this is like the Breakfast Club, and you're not in the Breakfast Club. You're the principal of the Breakfast Club, and you're not in the good spot, right? All of the nerds and the jocks and the burnouts and the cheerleaders are ganging up against you and running through the halls and having great adventures. I love all those old movies too. Anyway, the Hittites and the Assyrians are going to decide, we got to get these guys down a peg. And during the end of the rule of Shaushtatar, and during the rule of another guy named Artatama, which we won't talk about too much, the Hittites are going to invade. And this is, by the way, Tudalia. Tudalia, that big, strong Hittite empire who had gotten his world together and was ready to punch back. This is going to really hurt the Mitanni. When you're looking at Egypt and you're trying to fight Egypt, you get cold-cocked from the side by a newly resurgent, powerful Hittite empire. It's going to take you off your feet. And the Hittites punch the Mitanni so hard that it knocks Assyria loose. Now, the Mitanni are able to turn their army around from the border with Egypt and fight off Tudalia. But by calling in all of their reserves from Assyria, they're going to leave this region virtually undefended, and we're going to get another independent Syria. Assyria, not Syria. So now we have 5 big powers. You have the Hittites, the Mitanni, Assyria, Babylon, Egypt. And how are you going to handle that if you're Mitanni? Because now you're stuck between a lot of people that don't like you. Well, Mitanni goes, let's make friends with the big guy. And they start opening up negotiations with Egypt, especially under a guy named Shutarna. This is actually Shutarna II. Shutarna is going to go, hey, Egypt, we're really sorry. We didn't mean to beat you up like that. We got sucker punched by the Hittites. We lost the control of Assyria. We don't want to fight with you anymore. We want to try this peace treaty thing. And Egypt's like, all right, I mean, fine. We didn't really want to fight with you all anyway. And this is where we're going to enter what is honestly one of the most fascinating periods of history for me. This height of the Bronze Age, from about the middle of the 1400s until about the middle of the 1200s, for about 200-year span of time, there are these 5 giant empires that control millions of people's lives, what would today be billions of dollars worth of produce and product and trade goods, and they all just coexist. And it's super cool because we have so much good writing from this period, because when times are peaceful, people make more stuff. So we have these great archaeological records. We have these great written records. We have all of these different treaties. We have letters that were written back and forth, and I don't want to give too much of it away. But the treaty between Mitanni and the Egyptians is really going to be the sort of linchpin in this entire mechanism. Because with Egypt allied with Mitanni, everybody is basically stuck on the other side of their enemy, or allied and bordered with people that could beat them up if they teamed up. So nobody is really interested in starting a war. And one of the things that happens to seal this deal between Egypt and Mitanni is that Shutarna's sister actually marries the pharaoh, a guy named Thutmose IV. And that makes the prince of Egypt potentially half Mitanni. So this is a strong friendship bond that we've built here, right? We're sorry we beat you up. We're interested in making peace. I'm going to send my sister down. You guys do your thing. The tuttiest. So this independent Assyria and independent Hittite and Mitanni and Egypt and Babylon, this gets us to a very, very cool place in history. And I know that I'm leaving you on kind of the cliffhanger, but that's on purpose, right? I don't want to give away all of the cool stuff in one big spill. But I do want to, before we go, that's the wrong button. Before we completely go off and kind of wrap up, oh, I forgot to show you this. One of the things that is unfortunate, also because we haven't discovered the capital of Mitanni, is that we don't have an overwhelming large amount of their artifacts. This thing that you see here is a seal from Shaushtatar. This would have been his royal seal, and you can actually see him here in the middle, dressed all in his fancy clothes and all sorts of gods and stuff around him. And this is sort of the Mitanni royal seal up here, which is a bird with a big star above it with these lions around the corners. One of the few relics that we actually have that identifies the Mitanni on their own basis. And you might say, well, if they're such a big empire and so powerful and so independent, why don't we have more of their stuff? And I'm not going to answer that question because it gives away so much cool stuff about the collapse of the Bronze Age. Suffice to say, Mitanni doesn't have a comfortable ending, if you will. All right, so this is the map that I wanted to show you. So by the end of the period of time that we're talking about, you have these 5 big empires. And you can see down here the Egyptian Empire. You have the Hittite Empire. You have Mitanni kind of wedged in between them. You have the Assyrians who are ruling this region, and then you have the Kassite Babylonians down here. You're at the edge of your seat. Thanks, Shane. I love you guys. This is one of the highlights of my week, and I'm not even being sarcastic, and I'm not pandering to the crowd either. Talking to people that are interested, or at least act very well like they're interested, that's legit stuff for a teacher. That's like crack. I get more useful interaction out of 1 hour of these than I sometimes get out of an entire week of classes at college. So I really do appreciate you all hanging out. But this big 5 powerhouse region that we have right here is frequently referred to as the Club of Great Powers, which is going to be a topic for itself week after next. So to sort of wrap up, we've talked about 4 of these big empires. Last week, the Babylonians and Assyrians. This week, Mitanni and the Hittites. Next week, we'll talk about Egypt. Though we've already talked about Egypt a little bit, so I don't want to bombard us totally with Egypt. I do want to bring in the border region of the Minoan people and the Mycenaean people, because they're going to play a role in this larger collapse as well. And the Mycenaean collapse is just as important and tied to this larger system's collapse as it is. And I promise that I'm going somewhere with all of this. Not only are we talking about cool people, but the point that I'm trying to make here is not everybody's culture is guaranteed to exist, and system collapse tends to happen when you don't expect it. Did I ever read the Egypt game as a child? I did not. Enlighten me, Superb. I did love Egypt, and I will note that Egypt was probably my first historical love. I read read as a kindergartner is sort of kind of arbitrary. But Egypt has always been something that has fascinated me, and I've been on Egypt since I was a very, very young kid. I would love to teach an entire course in college on just Egyptian history, and I could probably split it up into 3 or 4, maybe master's level courses. I don't know if anybody's that excited about Egypt, but we will definitely talk about them. Man, knew more about Egypt than anyone ever knew. Well, thanks, KP. I appreciate that. Newbery book about a group of children who get obsessed with Egypt. Doesn't everyone go through that phase? Yes. And construct their own imaginary Egypt game where they play pretend as pharaohs and stuff. Okay. I don't care if it's a Newbery book or not. I'm going to look this thing up. It's called The Egypt Game. All right. For next time I need light reading. Okie dokie. So there's the discussion for today. To kind of wrap up, the Hittites, Indo-Europeans, move into central region, fight with some other people, force themselves top down on the region, have some more fights, make a big capital city at Hattusis that becomes an international trade hub, make a pretty big empire, beat a lot of people up, run into the Mitanni, run into the Hittites, run into the Assyrians. The Mitanni show up a little bit later. They're Indo-Aryans, a little bit different than the Indo-European Hittites. They have chariots too.
I'm Spartacus!
I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
No, I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Thank you, KP, for that sub. by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. All right, it's on the list. I think there's a sequel about Rome or Greece. Oh, I love Rome and Greece too. You always used to go to the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose, California. Oh, do they have Egyptian stuff out there? I think they do. I've never been out that way, Fid. Yep, a ton. Cool. I need to get out that way. I am Spartacus. Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
You're Spartacus. And I am Spartacus. And we are all Spartacus. Thanks, Superb. I appreciate that, man. I really, really do. You don't know how much I appreciate that. Or I could tell you, but it would sound disingenuous. Anyway, okay, so I am kind of officially done on my side of the table tonight. So if anybody has questions about anything that we talked about, if anybody wants to redeem some channel points, sincerity is my strong. Well, I don't know. I don't take compliments very well, and the monetary investment, I take it as a compliment. I greatly appreciate it. Coming across as sincere. Yeah, I'm too goofy. I say things and then people are like, are you being serious? It's a problem from having sarcasm as a kind of a default voice. Do you have any favorite of these old empires? Hattusis or Okay, so I'll be honest. I am absolutely fascinated with Mitanni. And it's because we don't know as much about them as I feel like we should. And it's also because they get passed over a lot. One of the things that is sort of a byproduct of not knowing concrete data and having to be educated guessing is that scholarship tends to run away from that stuff. So if you look at these big, like these Club of Great powers, if you look at any of the other four, if you look at Hattusis or Egypt or Assyria or Babylon, they have hundreds. I'm telling you, hundreds of books published about each and every one of them. When I was working on my master's, I could not find a single manuscript or monograph, a single book that was devoted to just Mitanni. That was back in 2015, and I would argue that there probably still isn't a single book about Mitanni that's out right now. But that doesn't mean that there's not enough information out there to write a book. We know a lot more about Mitanni than people want to talk about, but what bothers a lot of scholars is the threat of being questioned. And I don't know if any of you all are involved in any sort of publication of scholarly material, but one of the things in history that people are absolutely petrified of for some reason is publishing something and then somebody that is deemed their superior going, I don't know about that. People will avoid discussing topics completely because somebody else might go, I don't know. I don't know about that. And to me, that seems kind of a cop-out, right? The whole point of learning is to ask questions and exchange information, right? So when I got opportunities to write papers, I took an entire class on the Bronze Age and another class on the Iron Age as my master's. I did projects on Mitanni. I did a mapping project using geolocation data to show where I thought the capital of Washukani was. I wrote another another paper that re-examined the collapse of Mitanni, because frequently when they're mentioned, it's always in passing, or it's always like, well, the Assyrians beat them up, or the Hittites beat them up. But it's never talking about their culture, their people, or where they came from, or anything like that. There hasn't been even a lot of dissertation work done on this stuff. And to me, I don't like big unanswered questions. They sort of work in the back of my mind. So I really like Mitanni. Don't feel bad. I can't tell if he's being sarcastic, goofy, or honest sometimes. And you've known me for 35 years. The worst part about scholarly hesitance is when you have the definitive proof and you get called out by a bettor and you're the one in the wrong. Yeah, I mean, that sucks. But, and this might just be me being kind of lack of shame or just kind of darn the torpedoes. If I can write a paper that gets published and then somebody else that knows more about history publishes a critique of my paper and fixes it, people are then talking about that topic. And to me, that's the purpose, right? The purpose isn't to necessarily stand forth and make a definitive, I don't think I have any credentials really to put my foot down and say, this is what it is. I've not been to a lot of these regions. If we look at this stuff on the map again, it's in Syria and in Iraq. There's not a lot of people doing good archaeological work in Syria and Iraq right now because there are people getting killed over there. So there's not a lot of archaeological data. There hasn't been a lot of good site surveys. The site surveys that exist are mostly from the French and the British back in the early 1900s when they were going over there mostly to find cool stuff that they wanted to steal, right? So there you go. Fight the power. I'm okay with... Sometimes I'm okay with raging against the machine. Usually what I like to do is nettle the machine to the point that it changes itself. I'd assume both parties would learn. Yeah, exactly, right? If some big dude decided to smack me down in my place, so be it. He had to do the effort. Somebody else is going to read that, right? Passively, aggressively pester the machine. That's closer to my game. In my middle age, I have become a lot less interested in having full-blown out arguments. I like asking questions that get under people's skin, though. It's easier to help them recognize that they're wrong and let them change themselves sometimes than to poke at them. So when I grew up in Norway and had Norwegian history in class, it was this Viking king and then the next and then the next and then nothing until modern-day Norway. Do you find that history is difficult to unearth because the country in question is ashamed of the history? Joey, that's a great question. And yes, there is both a lot of shame and a lot of misplaced pride in nationalist history or historiographic work, right? So not to go full overboard into an entire discussion on the rise of nationalism and all of that stuff, but roughly speaking, and this is a hasty generalization, nationalism is a product of the Enlightenment. When people started classifying things, people started classifying people. And people didn't want to be on the bottom of the rung, so they created national identities that were already there in most cases, but sometimes not already there in some cases. And what ends up happening is, over the period of time from about the middle 1700s to about the end of World War II, you have all sorts of history work being done to either prop up a narrative of history or to attack an opposing narrative of history. And you wrote attack history against the things that made you look bad, and you wrote propaganda history to prop up the things that made you look good. And this happened all over the world. This happened in the United States. This happened in Europe. If you look at a lot of the concepts of nationalism, what it produced in countries like Germany, right? So before 1878, Germany was not a country. It was a bunch of smaller regions. But you had people that thought Germany should be unified. And what they started pushing is history. They push folklore, music, history discussions. They find historical texts that they amplify, and they create this concept of pan-Germanism. And this is used as a tool by the people that put Germany together. The same thing happens in Italy. The same thing happens in Serbia, to a certain extent over in Russia. Otto von Bismarck is a master propagandist. He was very in touch with the concept of history and how it played into the German people's roles. But you can even see this stuff going on right now. And I know I mentioned this earlier in the stream, and Joey, this is still towards your point. One of the things that's happening right now in the United States, and even in other countries around the world, places like Britain and France, where the concept of racism is being re-examined, one of the things that's happening is the history narrative that has been pushed and taught in schools for so very long is crumbling under people learning on their own. And when you go to schools in America, you don't talk about necessarily the horrible racism that exists. And especially if you grow up in the South of America, in the state that I live in, the narrative that you hear just from your family and from the people around you is one of the glorious South, and the Civil War in the United States was about states' rights. And you hear things about the lost cause of the Confederate States of America. And this is propaganda history. It's not accurate. It's based on pushing a certain narrative. And when the culture as a majority understands that that narrative is wrong, that's when you see stuff like people pulling down Confederate statues in America. Or, like, here's a great example. In Belgium, there was a statue of King Leopold that was defaced and burned and then pulled down. But Leopold is vastly considered by a lot of the Belgian historians one of the greatest kings ever. But he was also directly involved with all of the atrocious things that Belgium did when they were colonizing Africa. So you have this statue to this guy and you're told this is a great leader, and not everything that Leopold did was bad. He was a human being. Here's the thing about human beings. We do stuff that's good and we do stuff that's bad. And we do stuff that's in between. So trying to eliminate everything that's bad and put forward just this idealized version is a very, very dangerous thing. But you can also do the opposite. You can demonize somebody by taking away the good and just showing the bad. So to sum up all of the stuff that I've just rambled about for 10 minutes, yes, there is a concerted effort by a lot of countries to minimize the bad and exemplify the good. So I know I just rambled a lot, but I feel like that was a great question that I needed to pay some attention to. Dun, dun, dun. I sometimes play the space MMO called EVE Online. I've heard of it. I've been interested in playing Vanities. I don't know if I could get into it because I think it can cost a lot of real money. However, one of the leaders, figures in the largest player lots, calls himself the Mitanni, aka the Spy Master. Oh, well, that's interesting. The Mitanni did have some spies. The rules come up after I mention a famous German leader. That tickles me. Oh yeah, states' rights to own slaves, exactly. States' rights concerning slavery, exactly. That reminds me of a meme you saw about how Nirvana was a band longer than Confederacy was a thing. Right. And that's the thing about it, right? It's a nasty business sometimes. Obama was the president of the United States longer than Confederacy was a thing. He was. I'm not going to doubt that. I need to be really careful right here. This is a place where I really need the opinion hat. What Superb just said bugs certain people in our country in ways that makes them do really, really dumb stuff. The fact that an African American was the president longer than the Confederacy was a thing irks the devil out of some people. We can learn from the good and the bad. Exactly. That's exactly right. When you see somebody doing something in the history that's bad, you go, hey, that was bad. We shouldn't do that again. And when you see people do stuff good in history, you go, hey, that was good. We should try to figure out how to do that again. Right. And this is exactly what I'm trying to get across here in this stream, right? You guys are making my heart feel happy. I feel almost like I should shut up and just let you all talk. But yes, our goal is to do good stuff and not bad stuff, and learn about the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then recognize that we're all people, right? This does not excuse the bad, because when I do something bad, there are repercussions to it. And some of those repercussions are being remembered as a jerk, like Hitler. He did lots of bad stuff. I don't think I can redeem him. But was he a leader that led Germany out of a recession? Yes. Did he lead Germany out of a depression? Yes. Did he genuinely increase the average living for just kind of the average German person in Germany when he was ruling? Yes. But was he a bigot? Absolutely. Was he a hateful individual? Yes. Was he responsible for the deaths of millions of people? Certainly. But some people might get really upset if I go, Hitler had a very stable economic policy and fixed a lot of the problems with the German economic structure. People might go, oh, are you saying Hitler is the great leader? In certain respects, yes. It's just the facts. Learn from the past, acknowledge it, but don't over-glorify it. There we go. And I think that might be where we can kind of wrap up. I think KP hit the home run there. Everybody, this is good chat. I like this. Go find somebody that's different than you and love them. And then go find somebody that's like you and love them too. Just love everybody, right? Let's slip the puppy of war. End on the puppy note. Kaylee, you want to come on stream? Oh, yes, she has been right here beside me. She has been a faithful companion. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Hello. You want to give me sugars? Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, the sugars. Oh, yes. Okay, that's kind of almost too much sugars now. You want to look right here? Hello. Oh, the puppy. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Hello. Did you get your 5 minutes of fame? She side-eyed the camera. That was her telling you all that I can't love you more than I love her, right? So that was a threat to you all that she's top dog around here. So be warned, right? All right, ladies and gents. Let me see if there's somebody on that we can